Loose Women, the podcast, is brought to you by Mecca Bingo.
Home of bingo besties, where fun and friendship come together, just like best mates.
MeccaBingo.com is the home of legendary bingo. I love being let loose with me dobber.
We all love a win, and the Mecca Prize Promise brings 3 games a day, and everyone who plays is a winner.
Players must be over 18. Terms and conditions apply. Go to meccabingo.com for details and please be gamble aware.
This episode of Loose Women, the podcast, contains some adult themes, including discussions about domestic abuse.
On today's episode of Loose Women, the podcast, we will be discussing parenting styles. Do we agree, or will that lead to a heated debate? We will also be doing our regular feature Loose Ends, where we each ask each other a question and neither of us know what we're going to be asked.
No, but I do know I've got a juicy one for you though, Denise, so I'm looking forward to your answer on that. And we're also going to be talking about our Facing It Together campaign, which is all about domestic abuse. Denzi was talking about her experiences and also giving a little bit of advice.
MeccaBingo.com, sponsors of Loose Women.
Hello and welcome to Loose Women, the podcast with me, Denise Welch, and the gorgeous, the wonderful Miss Charlene White.
Oh, I almost feel like you need like drums or a drum roll or something.
Well, welcome to your first podcast. This is, of course, veteran podcaster here, my third.
And I'm a podcast veteran, so I will be
taking... No, you're a podcast virgin.
I'm a podcast virgin, that's right. So I shall be taking your lead.
Well, I'm just glad that it's you because, for those people who don't know, I love it, and you probably dread it, when we're on the panel and you're in your anchor chair and I get to sit next to you.
Yes.
Why?
So we do... So on Loose, we have like seat 1, 2, 3, 4. You, when we did the show recently... I was in seat 1 as always. You're in seat 4, so you're slightly further away from me.
Well, no, I hate it. I mean, I'm not a seat 4 lover anyway, but apparently I'm somebody who's I'm a sort of movable feast.
You are, but then when I'm in 1 and you're in 2, so you're next to me. Oh, I love it. But also, I'm always on the verge of getting into trouble in some way, shape or form, because you bring out like the naughty girl in the back of class out of me.
I think it's something to do with the fact that because when you joined the show, which is how many years ago now?
5 years? Well, because Florence, my youngest, she's 5 and she turned 6 in October, and I started the year after she was born. So she wasn't yet 2. She was just
Well, you were sort of the first... It was like having a real grown-up had come to town because you were a newsreader. So I was a bit, not intimidated, but it was kind of a funny fit for you because this is an opinion and anecdotally led show.
Yeah.
And you are, obviously, your job is that you have to be completely...
I'm impartial.
Impartial. Yeah. And so there was something in the naughtiness of me that wanted to bring out that side. And then when I realised that I could make you laugh before you had to go to a serious link, I just cranked it up.
You did, and I'll have moments where I'm talking into camera, or I'm talking to the audience, I'm talking to other women about something really serious, and then going on to something really serious. I'll see in the corner of my eye that you're writing something on the paper, and I know what's coming next. And it's when someone takes a break and someone else is talking, you will slide the paper across to me, make me read it, and then I'm not allowed to share what's on the paper because it's too naughty, or react to what's on the paper.
And there was something once that I had to get the information to you because it was someone that we'd cut away to a link or another show or some such thing. And it was something that involved a person that was on the screen at the same time.
Yes.
And
He was famous,
and I have a past. And I had to get that information to you at some point, but you happened to be in the middle of a link when you read it, and it was probably too much information about that person.
I think it might have also included a little doodle to reiterate the words, and then I had to continue with a programme with what was shocking information.
How did you find that change, though, of being... of, as I say, having to be totally impartial, but then coming on to us and your opinions and your anecdotes being sort of part of the contract, less so as the anchor or moderator, as they call it in America, don't they? Because you don't have to give as much as yourself, but you have to give more than you do when you're reading the news.
It was a really, and anyone I know the producers have been working with us for a while, especially from when I first started. It was a really difficult balance for me to find. There'd be lots of times where we'd do stuff and I would say, no, I'm not up for that. I remember they had like a Mystic Meg
on our show.
Yeah, on our show. And I think we were talking about horoscopes or something, and there was a Mystic Meg moment going into an ad break. And they sort of wanted me to put the Mystic Meg cloak on, and the lights would go dark in the studio, and then I'd have like a ball in front of me as though I was going to be able to predict the future. And I was like, no. I'm doing evening news, which is our 6:30 national news programme on the same channel. I'm doing evening news at 6:30. I cannot be dressed as Mystic Meg.
Be dressed as Gypsy Rosalie in the day.
At 1 o'clock, and then sort of talking about, I don't know, like the Syrian war or what have you at 6:30. The two things just don't match up. But I think over the years we've sort of reached a
You've
happy
got a good
medium.
balance now, haven't you? Yeah, for sure.
So I think it's a lot easier for me now because I think everybody's found a balance where I'm concerned, and that I don't necessarily get asked to do a lot of the sillier stuff.
It's funny because Colleen, and I know I've seen a message to Colleen that she sent you before. I think that still sometimes when we've been with you in the day and we've talked about all sorts of things, some that are not able to be broadcast, and then we see you with the news at 10 bongs, and then it's Charlene, and we go, oh my God, Charlene's our friend. She's so grown up. She does a proper grown up
Honestly,
job.
the amount, if I was going to my phone now and show you, I get a constant stream of messages from Cole after we've done the programme during the day, and I go onto the news, and I'll get out of the news at 7:30, and I'll get a text from going, I can't believe I know the lady that reads the news.
I know, she
I'm
does.
like, but you were on TV with me
Colin's
like
proper
6
starstruck
hours
about
ago.
your job.
And she goes, I just cannot believe that I'm friends with somebody that reads the news.
It's hilarious.
And I'm like, do you know who you are? You're Colleen Nolan.
From the actual Nolans.
Yeah, I can't believe I work with you. She goes, oh, no.
I just think it's because it's grown up. But we've had a sort of a royal time recently.
We both had to be really grown up.
Both had to be grown up because I was yesterday at Clarence House.
You were? Yeah.
with Queen Camilla. Well, I was actually on Mother's Day night. Louis, my youngest, took me out for pasta, and I said to him, he said, "Oh, are you working this week?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." I said, "But actually, tomorrow I'm going to Clarence House to meet the Queen." And he looked at me and he thought she's lost it because he went, "She's dead." And I went, "No, the actual now Queen, not the old Queen." Thinking, oh, poor mum.
No, but you know
because I
what?
think it's still hard.
It's in our heads.
The Queen will always be the Queen.
Yeah.
But I think, and I think Camilla is officially Queen Consort, isn't she? But I think we just refer to her as the Queen.
Camilla, yeah.
But so I was there at Clarence House with Janet Street Porter and two of our producers, Laura and Sally, and we were there with Safe Lives, which is a wonderful charity which centres on domestic abuse of all kinds and coercive control. And before we did our Facing It Together campaign, also bringing attention to domestic abuse, I had been at CrimeCon. Because for those who don't know, I'm the self-appointed Crime Minister of Loose Women.
You are our Crime Minister.
So I got invited to CrimeCon, where although I was in awe of all of these people that I'd seen, the podcasters and stuff, and it was very exciting for me, but it was also, I didn't realise it would be so harrowing. And I was introduced by a crime analyst friend of mine, Laura Richards, and Isla Triquare, who Isla, who is a crime journalist, to Diana Parks. And her friend Hetty Nanton. Now, Diana Parks, the reason I got invited to Clarence House yesterday, Diana Parks is the mother of Joanne, who was sadly killed by what we call the British Airways killer. And her and her best friend Hattie have campaigned for him to be kept in jail. And it's just, oh my God, it's absolutely...
It's a harrowing case.
It's a harrowing case. So they have been part of Safe Lives, and they actively encourage Camilla to come into it, which is why she's now a very active part of that charity.
And we were invited because of our, Loose Women. We're invited to go along because of our Facing It Together campaign, which of course is all about domestic violence, but also about the fact that it's not just about the individual who is involved in a domestic abuse situation. It's about those who are around that person,
what they should do,
how they can support, and help them make the best steps forward when it comes to being in a domestic abuse relationship.
And everybody there yesterday that I spoke to, all representing these different organisations involved in all sorts of domestic abuse, honour killings, and they were all hugely supportive of our campaign, because they said, you know, the fact that we are such a we're such a prominent TV show, and you know, even more so, with, you know, the show is going great guns, and we won an award for it. We were both there.
We were both there, and one conversation. So the award that we won was the Royal Television Society Award, and we won for Best Daytime, and we're very proud of the entire team for that. And you and I were both there, and a conversation that we had at dinner when we were sat there at dinner. Was we'd been on the show, 2 days prior or the day before, for our anniversary episode for Facing It Together, and you talked about a previous coercive and controlling relationship that you had been in, and the reaction online was huge and incredible, and we always appreciate when what we do sparks a bigger and wider conversation.
Well, because I'm not across all forums, but the piece from the TV was put onto Instagram by loose.women, and I've been doing this show for 23 years. Not always had the obvious. Not Instagram wasn't around in 1936 and whenever I started, but I have never had in my memory such an incredible response to the piece of me talking, for quite an amount of time, very personally, about the sort of things that had happened to me. And it was a wonderful response, and great to see that the campaign is working so well. But it was also a heartbreaking response, because hearing from victims, survivors of abuse, not just physical, of course, like mine, coercive control, but also hearing from women and men who, until they saw me talk, didn't really have a name for it, or they just related to it and said, oh my God, that's me. And it was very, very upsetting, but heartwarming in a way, to know that we're doing something to help.
Well, yeah, and that's why we do what we do, really, is trying to be impactful and make people, men or women, feel like they're not alone in whatever it is that they're going through. But when we were at dinner and we sort of talked about that, and you said one of the most interesting things for you is a few days later, when you were in the car driving, you had to pull over because you thought at that point, I can tell the story, I've told it a few times and it's fine, but actually it's the fingerprints that are still in you emotionally. You can still have a reaction.
I don't think I'd realised, I'm not somebody who says, oh, I've blocked it from my mind, because it is something that I have talked about, and if ever I am asked to talk about it, and I'm talking about socially with friends, I'm also incredibly now aware when I see what I think is a coercive relationship. Whether or not I comment on it is not always the case, but I'm always aware of it. And yes, so I'd gone home. I then had a reason to drive up to the north, and I was in the car and I was reflecting on the show that we'd done and on the response that I'd had, and I just started to think back to all of those years, because it's a long time ago now, and to think of what I went through with this person. I mean, it was 7 years, and I just got so upset of feeling so sorry for that girl or that woman that I was, that I turned off into a services and I sobbed for about 10 minutes, and I can't remember the last time I've ever done that. I just really needed to get a lot out of my system, and then I was okay and I got on my way.
Did it surprise you though?
It really did, because it really because I was on my own, and I was just boring 3 hour journey or whatever, and I always take a wrong turning, so it becomes 5 hours, and I just started to think about it, and then I started to think about how that relationship had impacted on other what do you call them, subsequent relationships, because I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew what I didn't want. So I came to my next big relationship, which was probably with my boy's dad, with Tim, who, as you know, I'm still friendly with. I came to that with no compromise. And I mean, I do kind of joke about that side of it, in that, because I'd decided that no one was ever going to tell me what to do again, that even if Tim had said, darling, it's 6 a.m. and you're still dancing naked on the table, I would have said, well, I'm not going to get down. Nobody's stopping me. And I sort of had to learn to compromise again afterwards. But I mean, to give an example of the specifics, it's the fact that in a coercive controlling situation, it starts very slowly. Usually these people are very charming. There's a lot of, this person that I was with was an incredibly good looking person. I was very, very, very physically attracted to them. And of course, I fell in love with this charming, charismatic, wonderful person. And that's the person that you always think will eventually, you can get that person back and you can change them. And it started slowly, and what they do is, and this is a very common pattern, they try by slowly chipping away at you to isolate you from your family. So again, this is many years ago, there was no mobile phones. And so I would probably call my parents, I don't know, I would say 3 times a week, maybe from a call box. You know, we lived in a flat that had the call box in the hall type of thing. And so I would maybe call them 3 times a week to see how they were. They'd call me. But he started to say that I was obsessed with why are you so obsessed with your parents? Usually these people don't have much of a connection to their family either. Then it became about talking about my friends. They're not laughing with you, Denise, they're laughing at you. You're not aware that they're laughing at you, chipping away at my confidence all of the time. It became the norm to lie about where I was, because even if I was just with a bunch of girls, he would always accuse me of having, who was that guy's voice I could hear in the background? I mean, I might have been in a pizza restaurant or something, but I was so frightened of the kickoff. There's one example which I did tell on the telly, but for those people who didn't see. So I wasn't well known at the time at all. I was only in my 20s, and we were sat in a restaurant, and I was facing the door. Right, the vanity from him was incredible. I mean, he'd pick up any bit of cutlery and he'd be holding the knife in front of him, doing his hair, honestly. I mean, narcissism out of control. Anyway, we're sitting in the restaurant, and as far as I was concerned, we were having a nice evening. And it's pathetic, really, because all the time I'm thinking, oh, this is quite a nice evening. Oh, this is going well.
It's not
Things
pathetic.
that you shouldn't be thinking that, But I was always analysing it in my head, like this narrative going on. Oh, everything's going okay. Anyway, the door opened of the restaurant and a couple walked in, and I looked up and just made eye contact with the couple. So it's not like they recognised me. I just looked at them and I smiled and they smiled. And he turned, called the man of the relationship over and said, what are you staring at? Do you want my girlfriend? And flipped the table up in the restaurant. And
when you were in it, this isn't something we got into on the show, actually, on the TV show. When you were in it, did you realise that you were in it? I mean, we didn't even use things like coercive and controlling behaviour at the time. So how would you have described it at that time? And did you realise that you were in something of that ilk?
The thing is, and not for a long time, because the language that they use is always, if it got me to the point where I said, I can't deal with this anymore, then it is the tears, the amount of times I've sat in the car with the person, outside a theatre, outside a place of work, the tears, please don't leave me, please don't leave me. I love you so much. Nobody's ever going to love you like I love you. The only reason I'm like this is because of you. You make me like this because you make me jealous, because I love you so much. I then, he used to sort of say that if 75 naked, beautiful women had walked past him, he wouldn't even notice them. 7 years later, when we eventually split up, it turned out that was, let me just say, not true. There was one example whereby I had bumped into a person who was a model, and we didn't call them supermodels in those days, we called them top models. And when on the few occasions we'd had a sense of humour about stuff, or he had, and you'd say, oh, who do you like who's a celebrity, and who do you like who's a celebrity? And he had said this particular model, and I, through a friend who worked at the agency, I bumped into her and I said, oh my God, my boyfriend thinks that you're gorgeous. Would you sign a photo for me? And she did. And I didn't know for years later, he'd called her up the following week and proceeded to have a 2-year affair with her. Yep. All the time I wasn't allowed to look sideways. He would do things like he came to see me in a play, and I was always the best thing in the play. Nobody else was good. And I'd say, yeah, but that person did a brilliant performance. No, they didn't. The play was yours. And there was one night when it was the first night and it was the party. So obviously I wanted to go to the party. And my mum and dad were there, and my sister Debbie. And he said, listen, we're not going to go at the party. I've booked a restaurant. I said, we have to go at the party. You know, I have to go even at least for half an hour. He went, darling, what you don't understand is that I can tell they're all talking about you. They don't really like you. So what I've done is I've booked the restaurant. I was so frightened of a kick-off or him saying anything. Again, it wasn't unusual to feel like that. We went to the restaurant and I smoked at the time. And I remember going in my bag and putting a packet of cigarettes on the table. I went to the toilet and I came back, they weren't there. And I said, oh, where's my cigarettes? He went, what cigarettes? I said, the cigarettes on the table. And he looked at my family and he went, oh, did you see cigarettes there? They didn't say anything. Afterwards, my sister said, I didn't like to say, he took your cigarettes, hid them, and then told you that the cigarettes weren't there. And we use the phrase now, gaslighting.
Yeah.
But funnily enough, not that I'm taking credit for inventing the gaslight phase, it was just ironic that during the time of this relationship, I was in a play in Brighton called Gaslight, the play Gaslight. And I used to say to my friends, he's making me feel like Mrs. Manningham, you know, because this guy tried to make her go mad. And that's what I used to feel like. And it was just... It was my desperation to want him to fit in with my friends. He didn't have any friends. That's always a bit of a key sign as well. He didn't have any. And if I, at the time, he then went, at the time, he wasn't a drinker. So if I had 2 glasses of wine, I was an alcoholic, you know. Yeah. And I was just so used to it, Charlene. But I think that
it's really
it took
interesting
me a long
you,
time for me to realise the impact that it had on me.
And you can almost see in the way that you're sort of sitting and the way that you're talking and you're twirling with the cushion and stuff as you talk. Yeah, that you can see that there is, even retelling it is hard, and it doesn't matter the period of time that's passed between then and now. You can see in the whole physical way that you are retelling.
Have you had
that
a friend?
story.
I mean, what would you have said to me at the time? Because if my friends all they used to say to me was, we love it when you come out without him. We feel that you're, you know, and I used to say, oh, obviously everybody changed, because I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
It's hard for, you know, what you said earlier is with our campaign, we're encouraging, trying to help those who love those people. But people also don't want to be a shoot the messenger thing. It's hard, isn't it, to know what to do?
Yeah, I think it's hard, and I think the message that we're sort of trying to get across with this is sometimes your friends do always know, and it's about, and Kelly Bryant talks about this, and there was some friends who just had enough of her being in a situation, and, you know, felt that when she was in her domestic abuse situation, that because she kept going back, there were some friends that were annoyed by that and found it very difficult to be friends with her. And she says the friends that will always mean the most to her and will always have her heart are those friends that, despite what she did, they let her always know we're here. And I think that's part of what we're sort of trying to do here with our campaign is sort of, you know, don't ever leave your friends. You may not understand the situation, but just don't leave your friends. And that's part of the reason why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Thanks, as always, for kind of being open.
Of course.
Because we do it because we feel like it might help somebody.
Well, that is it. If people can recognise this situation as their own, then hopefully they might reach out or at least reconsider.
And if anything that we've discussed in this part of the podcast, if it's impacted you and you want to seek out some help or see where you can find help, if you go to itv.com/helplines, we've got lots of information and organisations that you may want to look up. But we're going to take a very short break now, so we'll see you after this.
Welcome back, and we just want to say a big heartfelt thank you to everybody who has been listening to and enjoying our Loose Women podcast.
Indeed. I mean, we're having a bit of a ball. I'm enjoying this, actually. And if you're enjoying us as well, don't forget to subscribe, follow and rate us wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Remember, it is free, and it also means that you won't miss a single episode. Why would you want to miss a single episode, quite frankly?
I want to talk to you, Charles, because about parenting, because recently I was very flattered to be asked to do a column for The Independent. And
yeah, we both have a column in there.
Yeah. I mean, mine's not a regular one, it was a guest one, but it was nice. That felt a bit grown up to me. But I did it on helicopter parenting. And for those people who don't know what helicopter parenting is, it's just basically about hovering, not always when you're wanted, around your children. And I found it interesting to write and reflect, because when my kids were little, I was the complete antithesis of the helicopter parent. Obviously, I loved and cared for my children.
Yeah.
Of course I did. But I was a busy working mum. I had to rely on other people helping me. Obviously, my family, my ex-husband, of course, also an actor. But I also relied on friends. The kids often, there's 12 years between them. So it was Matty, and then 12 years later, Louis came along. But I was very, if my kids went to do a sleepover at somebody's house, as long as I had met and sort of knew the parents, I wasn't ringing them all the time like I know some people do, going, oh, is she fretting? Is he fretting? Is he doing all of this? I was totally fine. I did not fret. Now that they are grown up, nobody prepares you for this. And I think with me, it's because when your kids are little, you know that you are the absolute centre of their life.
Yes.
And although I know that my kids love me, of course they do. You know, I've got great relationships with both my kids. But it's kind of like I need them to want me all the time.
Oh, is that what it is?
Oh, my God. I need them to want me. So I insert myself where I'm not welcome. And Matty said to me, Mum, you know that room will survive without you. So he said, for example, if it's at one of his gigs and I'm sort of like looking after the people at the guest list, he said, Mum, in that room, you don't need to bring Steve over to talk to Maureen. Steve and Maureen are grown-ups and they're quite capable of finding each other in the room. He also said, that made me laugh, he said, and when I come home, you don't have to turn every homecoming into an episode of This Is Your Life. He said, but you seem to feel like I won't go and visit certain people if you don't bring them to the house. So his example, which is not true, he said, I'll be sitting in the kitchen and the doorbell goes, and he said, we go, oh, who's that? And Mum goes, Matty, here's Steve, who used to mend Dad's car. You haven't seen him since childhood, and here he is. Why do we have to turn that into?
But you. We've had this conversation on the way to the awards the other week, the Royal Television Society Awards. We won.
Which we won, yes, thank you.
You sort of given the example of if Matty's gigging somewhere and you've got guests coming or what have you, Matty has people who can sort all of that, but you feel that no one can sort it better than his mum. So you'll make phone calls.
Well, I will. And I have been sort of told off for it as well. Bearing in mind, my other son is in Stranger Things at the moment in town. And I sadly have seen it 12 times.
Oh, but I imagine that I would watch something
But they could get their
repeatedly.
own tickets, but I end up doing everything and I appoint myself as team leader when it's not necessary to be the team leader. And I'll call Louis and say, have you done this, have you done that? And Matty referred to me as the Poundland Kris Jenner, who is, of course, for those few people who don't know, the matriarch of the Kardashian clan, who is their momager.
Do you know what? I can see it, though.
It never used to be like that. And I don't feel that anything's going to get done unless I call them to do it. But I wonder with you...
But it will, though.
It doesn't
but
always...
But not the way that you would like it to be done.
Yes, not the way that I would like it to be done. And I feel that if I don't prod them all the time, then it won't get done. But with you having much... Because how old are your kids now?
They are 5 and almost 8.
And I know when we've talked about on the show before, as regards this staying over, you, for which I think are cultural reasons, were never allowed as a little girl to sleep over. Why was that? Why is that a cultural thing?
Because it's just not something... So bearing in mind that my parents came over from Jamaica, they immigrated here. My mum went to secondary school here. My dad came when he was 16 and then joined the RAF at 17. You know, in the environments that they grew up in Jamaica, no one slept over at other people's houses.
Really? No one did?
It's just, you know, family members maybe, but not... They definitely weren't staying over at friends' houses. But you also have to remember the environments that they're coming from.
Yes,
You
yeah,
know, my mum... You know, the house that my mum and her siblings first grew up in was like corrugated iron in the middle of like fields. You know, so where exactly are other kids staying over where there's barely enough room for you and your siblings?
So it was
it's just
practical
not,
reasons as well.
Yeah, it's just not a thing. It would never even cross someone's mind for someone else to stay over at someone else's house.
So that just came over with them.
Yeah,
that mindset.
I was never, and also my mum was a social worker who worked in children and families. So she worked with so many kids who had negative experiences of staying over at houses that weren't their parents' house. I think she was always very hyper aware of what could happen at sleepovers. So it just wasn't, I mean, you knew not to ask because it just wasn't going to happen.
And what about you with your two now? Are you much more flexible?
Yeah, like we've had, Florence is slightly too young, but we've had Alfie's friends come and stay over before, and also vice versa. But we sort of have those parents that we see a lot, who are in our house a lot, we're in their houses loads, you know, we trust each other. So, you know, I wouldn't send him to stay around at a stranger's house where I didn't know the parents that well. But there is, you know, it's definitely a group of parents that I know exceptionally well, you know, and I know their parents, for instance, I know their siblings, for example. So there is a built-in trust because of the longevity in which I've known them. And I guess I'm hyper aware. Andy, my partner, is also hyper aware of these things. And if there was an inkling where I just wasn't comfortable with something or someone, A, I probably wouldn't be friends with them at all. And B, my children definitely wouldn't be staying over at their house. But you also have to have open conversations with your kids about the dangers generally within life.
And of course, with the, you know, the online, the internet genie is out of the bottle, isn't it? So it's so different these days. Because when I think back to my own childhood, I when I was 12 and my sister Debbie was 9, we got a horse, we got a pony, Sam. And we used to have this pony that was kept 3 miles away at Dobinson's farm. God, it's amazing. You remember these things, don't you? And I used to walk on my own 3 miles to the farm. And your mum used to let you out the door at 9 o'clock in the morning, and there was no contact till you came home. And never did I see my mother at the doorstep panicking if I wasn't back. And apparently, statistically, there is still the same... The chances of anything happening to me or being abducted or anything are not much greater now, but we just know too much.
And we have a built-in anxiety as a result of knowing too much. But then by the same token, and maybe it's different because I grew up in London, and because my mum was a social worker, we were never allowed to just leave the house and be gone for hours, and they didn't know where we were.
Well, as soon as my mum had grandchildren, I used to say, Mum, you know, the kids have literally walked out the front door, and she was nearly sending a search party out for them, you know, even though she'd been like with us. We have a grandchild now as well, and I know that Lincoln will have him chip and pinned if he can, so we can contact him at all times. We took Theo, our grandson. So my stepson Lewis and his wife Lizzie have given us Theo, who is just the light of our lives. He's changed everything. He's just wonderful. And we took him out for food, and he wasn't grizzling. He doesn't. He's obviously the most perfect child in the entire world. But I got Thomas, because I thought it was going to be quite a while before the food comes. I got Thomas Tank on my phone and put it in front of him. Lincoln's face. He was fuming. I mean, fuming. But he really does... You know, we put the telly on and everything. He has Thomas Tank on it at home when he's at ours.
Sitting there
he doesn't want him to have that tablet world and everything. And then when other kids came in later, we looked, and they're all just on their tablets.
I think we made a mistake early on where they probably watched tablets a bit too much when we were out, because, you're just knackered.
Oh, listen, they have to be like a
it's
babysitter.
like,
My kids, I remember when my kids were young, and you know these people who they don't have children and then maybe pregnant, and they say, well, of course my kids won't be watching any videos. We used to have videos. You bump into them a year later and they've bought shares in Blockbuster. You know, for those people who remember Blockbuster, the store, we all use it. But anyway, we've got to take another break, which is hard for us to stop talking.
Yes.
And we'll see you in part 3 when we'll be having our loose ends.
Welcome back. It's time for Loose Ends. Let me explain how this works. We are going to ask each other a question that we have to give an honest answer to, but neither of us knows what each other's question is. The producers keep trying to encourage us to find out the question first so that we can figure out an answer. And both of us were like, nah.
No, we don't want to.
You can go first.
Okay. Now, this may have been answered because today, before doing this podcast, we had Paul McKenna on the show. And then I thought, oh, Charlene hasn't brought this up in front of Paul McKenna. Maybe I've got it wrong, or maybe it was referring to something else and this might be a strange name.
Oh, God, now I'm scared now.
Is it true that you have a fear or phobia of bananas? Or is a banana a reference to something you've got a pet name for?
Definitely not a euphemism. I don't like bananas. Like, it's not a fear. I just think they're absolutely disgusting.
What, the taste of them?
The taste, the smell, the texture, everything. So I'd have a situation... So my dad swears blind that I used to eat bananas from the up until the age I was 3 and then stopped. He swears blind that I used to eat them. And after 3, I decided I don't like them anymore. So I have this hilarious situation where I used to have to do the weekly shop growing up and drive down to Sainsbury's, go down to Sainsbury's, do the weekly shop and then take the shopping home and unpack it when I was still living at home. And I would have, you know, the plastic bags that you get in the supermarket. I used to have to put my hand in the plastic bag, then pick up the bananas, touch bananas, and then wrap the plastic bag around the banana so I didn't have to touch them. Because if I touched them, I could smell nothing but banana. And then I'd have to wash my hands because I just do not like the smell of it.
It's such a sort of, it's a weird, to me, if it was an anchovy, I'd kind of get it. Do you know what I mean?
But it's
smell.
such
an anchovy doesn't smell.
Really, not like a banana does. Like
a banana compared to an anchovy.
No, like a really, really ripe banana that is just, it's disgusting. So, for instance, if I'm on a train...
I love a banana.
If I'm on the train going to... so this is like my worst nightmare. Now it's all smelling out.
Someone eating a banana next to you.
Oh, my God. Like, honestly, and I will have to tilt my body to the side so I don't get the full onslaught of the disgusting banana. And then, if they then take that banana skin and, like, tuck it in between the chair, which... and then they'll get up in the train, they get to their station, they'll put it in the bin. But they put it just there, I would rather get up and stand. Because I cannot be sat in an environment where all I can smell is banana.
Unfortunately, you do know what's going to happen next time you're on a train. It's going to be all these people walking down, peeling bananas because they've seen Charlene White on the train. That's hilarious.
And I can't have smoothies that have got banana in it because if I can taste it, it's like a physical... I don't like it. So I can't have anything that I can taste a banana in. Banana bread... Can't have it.
Oh, so during the lockdown, you were not one of the banana bread makers?
No, I was not one of them. And I was at my friend's house Mother's Day morning and she cooked us banana pancakes. She's not a massive fan of bananas, but she was like, oh, because it's in a pancake thing.
So your mum-in-law's not a massive fan?
No, so I was at my friend's house Mother's Day morning.
They're getting a right hard shift from your family.
And then she made these banana pancakes that she swears blind you can't taste the bananas in. And I was like, I'll just have a bit, but I'll like cover it in lots of peanut butter.
Can I ask you why she's making banana pancakes if you can't taste the banana in them? Would she just not normally make a normal pancake?
No,
have a banana in it.
She likes a pancake with banana in it.
Even though she can't taste the banana.
I took one and I was like, oh, thank you so much for making pancakes this morning.
But that's like saying, I'm going to make a coconut drink. I hate coconut and you can't taste it, but I'm going to put coconut in anyway. Is that not the sort of same thing?
No, she made the pancakes because that's the one she always makes for her kids. So she made that, and bless her, I said, I will eat this because I felt bad because she'd cooked
Do
breakfast.
Florence and Alfie like bananas? Are they
Yes, I
penalised
had
by
to,
the banana
I had to work
situation?
really hard to not show my disgust. So, because I didn't want them to not eat bananas.
No.
So I'm like, bananas, kids. Oh, I'll just slice the bananas for you. Ah. And then I will immediately wash my hands. Even now, if I open a banana,
You see
for them,
that?
I'll wash
I mean,
my hands.
obviously, it's a weird one, but I can appreciate because you don't like the taste. But when I was in Corrie years ago, one of the actors in that, and talking to the Speakmans, you know the Speakmans,
Yes,
Eva and Nick Speakman, it's very, very common. He had a genuine fear of tomatoes. It wasn't like I don't like the taste of them. They would incur a complete anxiety in him.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, people used to think, and when I did a show called Wind in the Willows, one of the actors in that had a fear of buttons. And of course, because you think it's very light-hearted, we would all put buttons on.
Oh no!
Put buttons on his dressing table and everything, until I saw that this wasn't funny.
Yeah,
you know, it was a real fear. We don't know what the origin was, but it's odd, isn't it?
Yeah,
so what's gone on in your childhood to make you, not the banana thing because you don't like the taste of it, but people with these kind of irrational fears.
That's true.
The Speakmans are amazing,
I reckon that my parents probably gave me one banana too many, and I was like, nope.
Yeah, I'm not.
I reckon, 'cause
I'm not having that.
My dad loves. My dad.
I love
can
it's my
eat,
favourite thing.
like,
I have it with
5
everything.
bananas a day, but since getting a pre-diabetic thing,
He's not
he
supposed to
doesn't.
put lots of
He
sugar,
doesn't
haven't
eat
they?
lots of bananas, but he can eat like 5 a day.
Oh,
So it's not my thing.
I'm with your dad.
Right, my question for
Okay.
you. Do you know what I love always and forever, because I love you anyway, is like your confidence on socials and Instagram and stuff. Where does your confidence come from when you're posting like your thirst trap pictures when you're in your wonderful swimming suits and stuff?
Is that what they're called?
They're called thirst traps.
Well, I think there's a bit of a difference to me posting a thirst trap picture and say Olivia Atwood posting a thirst trap picture in her bathing costume. Right, I'll tell you what it is that I'm coming up 67 this year, okay? And I, over the years, have been absolutely fed up with, in inverted commas, women's publications telling us what we can and can't wear. You know, I grew up in the generation whereby there would be the ring of shame and they would circle. I still hate when they do who was the worst dressed at the awards ceremony and stuff. It's just, have your best dress, that's fine. But it's unkind, and they tend not to do it to
No,
to
they
men.
don't do it so
They don't
much
do it
now.
to men.
No.
It's unkind. So I got to the point whereby I thought, I am not being told that over 50 shouldn't wear a bathing suit or a bikini. I will wear one till I'm 97 if I want to wear one. So when I post the pictures, it's actually for women. It's not for men. Obviously, I'm huge with the lesbians, of course. So for them, it is a thirst trap. But it is not. It is because I will post a photo which is unfiltered, and that's partly because I don't know how to filter them. I'll only do it with Lincoln because we don't use a filter. He knows the exact angle to get me at. So like everybody else, you can have a bad angle,
Yeah.
and you know, then you go and you know how to sit, you know how to hold yourself and everything. And every time I do, it's always picked up by the national press for the clickbait because older bird wears costume. But considering that sometimes they can be so horrible to me, they are always lovely about it, and all the comments on Instagram are lovely. And I say that as if I do it for the likes. It's the fact that if 3 people out of those people say, do you know something, I was feeling really down on myself today, but look at Denise, she's 3 years off 70, she doesn't look bad, she's still got her bumps and her this and that and the other, but there she is looking confident in a bathing costume. And I always make sure that I have a costume that suits my shape. They're usually cheap as chips, I have to say. So I never buy expensive costumes because I know where I go to get the ones I like. And so that's why I do it. I mean, I know we hear a lot about empowering women and all that kind of stuff, but I do find that I will not be told by anyone, especially not a publication, who can and can't wear a bathing costume,
I'm giving
and
you a
that's
round of
really
applause.
why. And then when you've got especially on other platforms that aren't as kind, and you've got the haters, that makes me do it even more.
Yeah.
And that's when I say, if I'm lucky enough to live to my 90s, you will still see me thirst trapping out.
Oh,
I'll still be doing
and
it.
on that note, thirst trap, Denise. I'm sure we'll be back a fourth time on this podcast at some point. And I hope anyone that's heading off on holiday gains, feels powerful from what you've just said and feels like they can also take all the pictures they
Absolutely.
like in a swimsuit, and it doesn't matter what other people think, is about how you feel. But that's it from us.
It is. And if you want to send us a question, which we answer every week in one of our podcasts, then send it to loose.women@itv.com, and we would absolutely love to hear from you.
Indeed. And 2 more of the Loose Women will be back on Friday, answering questions that some of you have sent us in already. They'll be answering questions and also dilemmas that you've been sending in as well. But that's it from us. So we'll see you soon. But
We'll see
until
you very
then,
soon.
stay loose.